Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. This is going to be episode 4 of the playthrough series of Mr. President from GMT Games, and have a super brief introduction. First of all, thanks to everyone who's posted corrections in the comments. Please keep doing that. There is at least one case that I'm aware of right now in which it was something that I actually spotted that I had done wrong in episode 2, but I didn't spot it until episode 2 was already uploaded, and the correction is in episode 3. So what I'm going to do from now on is have a pinned comment on each video, and I will put a running total of corrections in that pinned comment. So if you're watching this after the fact, check that pinned comment for any additional corrections that I did not spot as I was either doing the playthrough or editing the video. That aside, welcome to episode 4. Let's get started. I thought I would also show you that I have tried to improve the lighting situation. I've got a lot of lights. It's just been so long since I've done any physical playthrough video that, that was at the old place. So I had to bust all this stuff and set it out. So I got this stand-up lamp here, which is actually something we inherited from the previous owners of the house, but seems to work okay. And then I got 3 of these USB lights over here. So as you're watching the video, let me know if you feel that all this new lighting improves the lighting situation in the video itself. Let me know in the comments. Now, I, of course, have overhead light in this room, but the overhead light are these LED lights that are really intended for garages. And while I appreciate while I'm playing that they throw a lot of light, they also throw a lot of shadows, and that's what was throwing the enormous shadows in the first couple of pieces of video footage that I filmed for this. So let me know how it works out. If it's better, if it's worse, let me know. So we are about to begin activation phase 2. So we'll move the current use action up to draw 1 chit. Now I'll observe again that activation phases 1 and 3 are very similar, but I think they're not quite identical. And activation phases 2 and 4 are very similar, but they're not identical. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a crisis chit out of the crisis cup. And what we get here, very interesting, NSA 2 cards. So let's see what that actually does. So going to the flip book, I draw the top 2 crisis cards from the deck. I choose one and remove it permanently from the game, reflecting NSA Intercept Intel's early warning that we have used to avert the crisis, and the other one goes in the reshuffle pile. Okay, so we have 2 cards here, Terror, Recruitment, and Training. We roll a d10 for a random region, increase 1 level 3, level 2, or level 1 terror group in that region by 1 level. If no terror group exists in the region, you add a level 1 terror group. And if there's a U.S. ally in the selected region, their next joint action must be to make an intel action. Place a must-choose intel counter on the ally's map space as a reminder. Ooh, that's going to be easy to forget. If there's more than 1 ally, roll to choose 1 randomly. Okay, so that's 1. The other one is They Want Your Job. Aspiring candidates attack you and your record. So immediate, this is a media slant item. So we'll have to look up exactly what that does. So immediately we place we make an RWC check, that's relations with Congress, and we pass, we draw and add 1 friend to the friends box. And if we fail, we remove 1 random friend from the friends box. That sounds potentially bad. Then we make a presidential prestige check. If we pass, we've enhanced our reputation. We get better public approval and party relations. If we fail, poorly orchestrated defense makes me look weak and non-presidential. Bad public approval, media relations, and party relations. All right, so one of these gets discarded completely. So I think I'm going to do the right thing and discard the terror group. So we'll put that in the discard pile, which is essentially removed from the game. I think if you discard, those cards aren't going to come back. But if they go into the reshuffle pile, then they will potentially at least come back. So They Want Your Job, aspiring candidates attack you and your record goes in the reshuffle pile. Now, we do notice that NSA 2 cards has a plus symbol on it. So that does mean that we will draw 1 more crisis chit. Let's see what we get here. Okay, so we draw 2 crisis cards on this one, and that's also got a plus. So we're going to do them in order. So here's the first one, and then here's the second one off camera here. Supreme Court Justice retires. This is immediate. Choose one of 2 types, party ideologue or moderate, as your new candidate. Place the Supreme Court nominee counter with the type you chose facing up into the 0 box in Congress as with a new bill. Okay, if you chose moderate, left by 1 box and -1 party relations. Okay, so what that will do, left by 1 box means if we go over to pending bills here, it'll move 1 over here, which means it's closer to being passed. So here is the marker for Supreme Court nominee. Now, if your party controls both houses, left 1 box. If opposition controls both houses, right 2 boxes. You will vote on this candidate as you would a normal bill to represent confirmation hearings and final Senate vote. Once you get a roll that would pass the bill, the justice is confirmed. Okay, now if roll, and I believe once that happens, we roll on effects of legislation chart D5 to determine results. If counter is removed before confirmation, the candidate is rejected, -1 legacy point, and -1 relations with Congress, then choose a new candidate and begin the process again. Okay, so party relations then. So let's adjust camera. I'm actually using the camera mount this time. Party relations is at 6, which is okay. Not amazing, but it's certainly better than nothing, right? Better than medium. So we can, if we choose a moderate, and I get the idea that if we choose an ideologue, then it does nothing happens here, and it just goes into the middle. And I'm not sure how hard it's going to be to pass that, considering that we've got 2 bills already. We did make a roll on infrastructure upgrades, but that failed, so that's kind of a wash. So if we choose a moderate, we would get -1 party relations, but it would go left 1 box. Let's choose party ideologue, and we'll see what happens with that. I'm going to keep this card out. Keep this card in front of you. Well, okay, the card says that. Until the Senate has confirmed a justice, and then when that's done, this goes into the reshuffle pile, as we can see from the tiny diagram over here, which I got to tell you is a little bit hard to read. My light's pretty good, but my vision is not, so maybe that's why. All right, so we'll just put that card down here for now, and we will move on back to finishing resolving the crisis card. So here's the second card that we got. Healthcare in crisis as doctors, hospitals, insurers deny coverage to government-provided plans. Okay, so we get a +1 domestic crisis and a -2 public approval. All right, so we will move public approval down to 38. So that's not great. And over on the CONUS track, we'll move domestic crisis up by 1. Now here on public cabinet focus, we will place a tensions counter. And the way this works is you always start by placing it on the lowest priority. So this one, cabinet effectiveness, barring something else happening, is simply not going to happen. Now, this is a media slant event. I have no idea what that means, so let's figure it out. Here on page 26 in the governing manual is how to do media slant. So certain crisis cards have a -1/+1 media slant designation. When I draw a media slant card after performing whatever actions the text on the card requires, then to discover the effect of the media slant on those events, check your media relations and apply any additional public approval benefit or penalty as listed on the box representing current media relations. So current media relations is a 5, okay? So the way I'm interpreting this is, and there is a sort of pluses and minuses based on where you are on this track. So the way I'm interpreting this is that I roll, and this isn't a pass-fail roll, I'm just adding the modifier, which is nothing, so it's just going to be the roll. So let's roll, and I think this is based on instruction D18 in the domestic charts book. I believe this is a D10 roll, so let's see what we get. Higher would be better, but it is not. We get a -2 public approval, and then I don't think that affects media relations one way or the other. So over here on public approval, where we're already at 38, we're going to lose another 2 to go down to 34. So apparently the healthcare crisis we have not reacted particularly awesomely to. And this goes, as we can see from the little diagram, into the discard pile. However, there is still a plus on this one. So we will go down here and we will draw yet another crisis chit. Okay, cascading event. So what this means is this is deck 2, so cascading event pile 2, which there is only one card in, and then that card will presumably move up to pile 3. Okay, so here is the one card that we had in the 2 deck, and we do the level 2 stage of the event. Place a worsening econ counter on the Eurozone, +1 regional crisis in Eurozone. The EU asks for U.S. help. We may opt to spend 3 action points to provide emergency economic aid, funds, loan guarantees, gas and oil, etc. to the EU. If you do, roll a d10. 1 to 7, the crisis stabilizes. Now here, to me, this is important. We place it, if that happens, we place a trending pro-U.S. counter in Eurozone, which is great, but we also discard this card. And then 8+ crisis continues, and then this goes to the 3 pile, okay? So regardless of what's going to happen, we are going to place worsening econ and +1 regional crisis in the Eurozone. So let's do that first. Okay, so worsening econ is going to be simply removing the economy worsening marker, since that will neutralize that. We did have that previous economy trending upward that was global, actually did all 4 state of the economy tracks. So that will be removed. We will increase regional crises, and then we will need to decide whether we're going to spend the 3 APs or not. And bluntly, I think, given our new understanding of how actions and action points are actually different, I think we will, in fact, spend those points. All right, so first of all, we're going to take ourselves down from 8 down to 5 action points available. As we've seen, I screwed it up until the point last episode where I figured that out. We did make an adjustment by giving myself 2 action points back. It was, in fact, probably more than that, but I didn't want to go back and try and figure it out, so that's going to have to be sufficient. But this is a straight action point expenditure of 3 points. So this will take us down to 5, and we're going to probably want to give ourselves some opportunities to earn some action points back later on. But since we are doing that, we can make the roll since we are sending that aid to the EU. So let's roll and see what happens. We have a 2. Actually, that's good. So 1 to 7, crisis stabilizes. We place a trending pro-U.S. counter in the Eurozone, and then this gets discarded. That's critical, and that's actually a bigger factor in why I made that decision than the fact that I can place a trending pro-U.S. Counter in the Eurozone. So let's go back and do that. Okay, so great for me. There's already a pro-trending U.S. or pro-U.S. trending marker on alignment in the Eurozone. So that will actually move up to 7, and then the trending will go away. So that's great. We are very closely in alignment with the Eurozone, but the Eurozone a wee bit messed up. Now, our cascading event goes here, and because that is the 3rd of the 3 chit spots, we don't, even though there's a plus, we don't draw another one. We'll move current U.S. action down to any 3 actions core support check. So, okay, so in this phase, or sub-phase, or segment, if you will, I will take any 3 action, any 3 of your 4 possible master actions, domestic, diplomatic, military, or presidential. Key cabinet members may not use +1 action ability for any actions in this segment, and I can forego those to recover an action point for each. So what I'm thinking I will do is actually use 2 actions, get 1 point back. But some of the actions, as we have seen, do cost action points as opposed to actions. Now, given the confusion over this and the fact that while this is 100% in the book, if you are approaching the game the way I did, which is to follow the recommendations, which is just, start going through the flip, set it up and start going through the flip book. I obviously didn't catch that. So I feel like it would have been better to say have actions and then call the points that you are spending something like political will or mandate or something like that. I think that would have been a little bit clearer in presentation of things. That is, again, a minor quibble, but that's just an observation that I'm making at this time. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, and this will cost an action and not an action point, is to perform a raid or strike on a terror group. And obviously, that is going to be the one level 2 terror group that we now have in target fixed in the Middle East. That's one of the things that we've been working towards. So we choose between the following 2 actions. We perform a special operations raid. It must be in target fixed on the intel track, and it is, and we roll on the SOF raid table, or we perform up to 2 drone strikes on target terror groups in a region. We may not attack the same terror group twice. The target terror groups can be in either the target fixed or the locating box, and roll on the airstrike drone table. And these are both in WM2, which can be found in the World Charts book. So let's look at WM2. So we can either do the Special Forces raid against the 1 terror group that we have in locating, or we can do 2 drone strikes, which will include that one, and also one of the 2 terror groups that we have in the locating box on the intel track. So let's see what we need here. So looking at, say, an average is a 5 or a 6, we have, barring DRMs. On the SOF, we have success or success with casualties. 5 or 6, we have strike is effective but causes civilian casualties. So it seems like this is a little more precise. So let's look at the DRMs. And I guess I want to make sure that we can see the DRMs in frame. So on the SOF raid, the Special Forces raid, we get a -1 if there is a U.S. Special Ops and a U.S. Intel counter in the region, which there is. -1 if there is focused national intel counter on the region, which there is. -2 if it's a UK, NATO, or joint ally raid in the Eurozone or Eastern Europe. It is not. -2 if it's an Israeli raid. It is not. +1 if the target is a level 3 or level 4. It is not. +1 if there are a combined total of 3+ Russia and or China influence counters or a base in the region. There, you can't see it, but there is 1 Russia influence and 0 China in the region. So it looks like we would be rolling on this table at a -2. Versus drone strikes. We get a -1 if there's a U.S. intel in the region. There is. -1 if there's focused national intel in the region. There is. -1 if the target terror group is in the target fixed box, and one of them is. +1 if there's no U.S. Air Force unit in the region. U.S. Air Force is in the region. And +1 if there are a combined total of 3+ Russia and or China. And that is, as we just saw, not the case either. Now, it does look like damage and loss airstrike mode, if we use an airstrike, more powerful than drone strike. And if we look at the action, we can make it drone strikes or airstrikes. So I think we're going to do the drone strike. And that is because we can potentially target 2 different targets. So let's go over there and see what it looks like. So we're going to roll on the drone strike, and we get a -1 for -1 if U.S. intel, another -1 for focused national intel, which is covered up by the tray there. And that is, and another -1 for the first of the 2, because this is in the target fixed space. So we're going to roll this at a -3. Let's see what happens. We have a 5, -3 is a 2. So our result there then is strike effective with no collateral damage, decrease terror group by 1 level, and we move terror group to the gathering box on the intel track. Okay, so what happens then is this goes down to level 1, and it goes to the gathering box, which is the first box. Now our second target, which is going to be slightly different DRMs, is going to be the other unit in the other terror group in locating. Now, again, we get a -1 to the roll because there's U.S. intel in the region. We get a -1 to the roll because there's a focused national intel counter in the region. But we don't get the extra -1 because the target is not fixed. So this one is only -2. So let's roll the dice -2. Okay, that's a 10. -2 is an 8. So that's not awesome. So our result there is strike is ineffective and causes civilian casualties. So we place a U.S. military footprint counter in the region, and this has a random value on the back, and there's now 3 of those in the Middle East. Now it says to public approval. I feel like that needs errata. This is not in the errata currently, which is errata that I did print out a couple of days ago. So to public approval, you could interpret that in at least 2 different ways. I am going to interpret that to mean that I lose to public approval, because I think nobody's really going to be cheering that if we didn't kill anybody we wanted to kill and we killed a bunch of people that we didn't want to kill. So let's make that adjustment. All right, so that's going to take our public approval down from 34 to 30. And that is -2 LP there. Those are legacy points, but I believe we're going to wait until something, maybe the end of the game, or the turn at least, to actually make that adjustment. We will wait until the sequence tells us to make that adjustment. So with our second action for this particular segment, we're going to use the bully pulpit to support to rally support for or against a bill in Congress. And in this case, it is going to be our Supreme Court Justice nominee. This does cost 1 action and 1 action point. We identify the target bill and we roll a d6, 1 to 3. That's great. Okay, so let's actually look at the DRMs here, because this might make this a bad idea. We don't have orator or media savvy. -1 if bipartisan cooperation is in the cooperative box. It is not. It is in the contentious box, which we'll give it a +1 instead. +1 if relations with Congress is 4 or less, or you have more opponents than friends. Relations with Congress is actually a 6, which is not bad. So we'd be looking, and public approval 60% or greater, which it totally isn't. It's at 30% right now. So this would be there's no negative effects here other than that it's costing me an action point. So I think what we're actually going to do instead is this action with our second act. This is 1 action plus 1 AP as well. All right, so, but this might swing the balance one way or the other, right? So we're going to try to encourage bipartisanship in Congress. It's 1 action plus an AP, so we will track down an AP, which is miraculously in frame. And then we'll roll a d6, and on a 2 or less, we move it right 1, and on a 6, -1 to party relations. So there is a potentially bad result here. So let's see what happens. We're looking for a 2 or less. We do not qualify for this DRM for moderate influence POTUS attribute. Our influence is Teflon, which helps us against scandals. And we do get a +1 to ally relations per turn, which we have not taken advantage of yet, and I'm not totally sure how that works. So let's roll the die. We're looking for low here. 2. Okay, that is actually great. Move bipartisan cooperation counter right 1 box on the bipartisan cooperation track. And that will take bipartisan cooperation at least out of contentious. And it's not cooperative. Now, we did spend an action point, but we had 3 actions here. And if we don't take one of those, we can get an action point back. So we will do that. We'll defer that 3rd action to get an action point back. Unfortunately, most of the things I wanted to do here were things that cost action points, except for the thing that I had the Secretary of Defense do with the drone strikes on the terror groups, one of which actually was very successful, and the other, which was unfortunately was a complete fiasco. So now we're going to perform the core support check. And what this is it's going to cause support to drift based on my relationship with the party's base, with my party's base. And that is this number at the bottom of party relations. So what this will do is this will shift me in public relations 2 boxes towards the middle of the track, which is 40. So that's good, because right now public approval is kind of in the toilet. So we're going to shift ourselves 2 boxes from 30 to 34. So that's great. And then we're going to move current U.S. action down to this item right here, which we haven't done yet at all. So I am going to do it at the beginning of the next episode. I'm trying to keep these a little bit small. I know that episode 3 was really, really long, and people get spooked by that. So I'm going to do a couple, I think. Let me know if you think this is a great idea, or if you'd prefer the longer videos. But based on the numbers for episodes 2 and 3, it feels like people prefer the shorter videos. So I'm going to try and do a couple of these different stages per episode, which will make the series longer, but it will make the videos shorter and more digestible. So if you think that's a dumb idea, please let me know in the comments. If you think it's a fabulous idea, also please let me know in the comments. So next turn, we're going to still be in activation phase 2, and we're going to do this terror or chaos action, which we have yet not seen.
So as usual for this kind of thing, please do thumbs up the video if you've enjoyed it or found it useful. Please consider subscribing to the channel for more content of all kinds. If you'd particularly like to point out any errors that I made this episode, please do so in the comments. Or if you have, additional requests, please let me know as well. It would be impossible to continue doing the kind of stuff that we do here at Ardwulf's Lair without the support and encouragement of our patrons and other supporters. So thank you, patrons and other supporters. And if you'd like to consider becoming a patron, then please check out the links in the video description. And for those who have asked, and several people have asked, these counter storage trays are STL models, so they are 3D printed models. If you're capable of doing 3D printed stuff, either because you have a printer or have a friend or relative that has a printer, or if your local library has a printer, which is sometimes the case. I do make the models for these. These are my designs. I do make the models for these available to patrons at the $5 and up level. So that is an extra benefit that you do get access to. And there's quite a lot of models. This particular tray, these are 5/8 inch counters. This is the LS44 tray, and it does pretty much fit across the width of the box. And I will eventually, once I put this thing away again, I will do a storage solutions video on Mr. President, because it's just tricky to store. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of cards. There's a lot of pieces. There's 2 big boards and some others and a lot of books. So storing this thing is not going to be necessarily straightforward. So look forward to that. Do tune in for the next episode, which will be along soon.